Hello, everyone. We are going to get started right at 7. I am going to be respectful of your time. I am so excited to be here with you all this evening. I have my tea. I hope you have yours. 3 minutes and we will jump in. Okay, and welcome back everyone to Thriving with Real. Today we are wrapping up our series with Vision 2025, crafting your purpose with heart and clarity. As we dive into literally one of my favorite topics, because I love a collective reset, I really want to invite more space for us to not make this performative. And I know that's not an easy thing to do because it's the first of the year and we have an idea systemically and culturally about how we should approach the first of the year, but I really want to reimagine what resolutions should look like. So remember, this is not about getting everything perfect or figuring it all out tonight. I want us to take a moment to just kind of let go of the pressure we might feel. I also want us to know that we have everything that we need to create the life that we've imagined. This is not about what we cannot have. It's very much about getting clear on what we really want and honoring those desires. It's about letting the songs of our heart be heard. And it's also about creating the vision, but trying to figure out what is preventing us from living the life that we've imagined, right? And so we're going to dig into what's stopping us from believing that we deserve to live out the songs of our heart. And I want you to allow yourself to center when doubt sneaks in, when you find yourself distracted. I really want you to focus on your breath. I want you to inhale through your nose. I want you to exhale through your mouth. I want you to bring yourself back to the present moment so that we can create something special. I am excited to jump into this journey. Let's go ahead and get started. Of course, housekeeping. So I want you to be comfortable. And comfortable looks different for everyone. So, like I said, I have my tea. Grab your tea. I hope you have your journal. You never know what's going to come up, what's going to flow when you are connected to clarity. I want you to stay hydrated. If you are easily distracted like me, you can have something to ground you. You can have a fidget spinner, something with texture. I want you to feel comfortable on camera, off camera, whatever engagement looks like for you. If you need accessibility, I want you to feel free to say the thing that you need. And of course, if you feel that you need to take a break, please feel free to take a break. Whatever comes up, I want you to honor what you need in the moment. For those of you who are not familiar, who are new to this space, I am Janae Hicks. I am a licensed clinical mental health therapist. I believe that this is my second career, right? I call it my second career. I spent over 10 years in leadership at Morehouse School of Medicine and graduate medical education. And I transitioned to this work because I realized that we didn't have a sustainable way to care for our doctors. And I wanted to figure out how to support. So that's always important for me to note because this work is deeply personal to me and it matters. You matter, we matter. And so I want you to leave this session feeling more unapologetic about what it means to care for you. In my private practice, I focus on workplace wellness. I focus on how to help work suck less because we spend so many waking hours there. I work with achievers. I work with high performers. I work with people leaders and industry influencers and people who are really passionate about making a difference. And that matters because if you show up to this life and you are willing to do this amazing work, then you're going to need a higher level of support. And it is my goal to provide that to you. I want you to also remember that this session is designed to create more space for you to uncover deep insights about yourself. So this is your session. This conversation is very much all about you. There is a collective conversation, right? And I want us to make some agreements within the space. One, there is no shame. Whatever comes up, comes out. I want you to not allow the ego to be here. This is about self-discovery, about getting curious. You don't have to get it right. All you have to do is just be present. So if something comes up, I want you to honor what comes up. If you are uncertain of why you're feeling the way that you feel, I want you to name the feeling, okay? We're going to be here together and we're going to honor what you need in this moment. So what are we doing? Before we jump into 2025, I want us to just take a moment to think back on this past year. It's been quite a year, a ride. It has been a lot. And so I always think it's important for us to sit in the pause and take a moment to reflect on 2024. What has 2024 taught you? I know when I'm in space with people, and I'm in space with people every day, all day, it's usually a lesson about digging deeper, and we are finding our inner resilience, and we are figuring out how to get through tough times, or perhaps we're realizing that we can get through tough times and we can get through it without impulsivity. We can actually respond better to the hard. In my space, my clients have realized that it's okay to ask for help, that it's okay to lean on the people who matter, whether it is friends or family or their connected circle. Having support when you are going through a hard time is a big deal. And we're honoring understanding that in 2024. I am hopeful that you learn to be a bit kinder to yourself in 2024. I'm hoping that when the challenge felt insurmountable, you are honoring the win of being able to figure it out and not over identifying with the challenge, right? We do hard better than anyone else. And if you take a moment to realize everything that you unlocked in the hard, then you can take these lessons and we can build on these lessons. I believe that 2025 is very much the year of transformation. There's going to be a lot of change in 2025, and we're going to have to learn how to lean into that change with grace. And so I want us to carry the insights that we learned from 2024 so that we can build and evolve and expand together in 2025. Okay. So what does that mean? It means we have to take a moment to acknowledge what shaped us. And I call this 2024 in review. Like I noted, I spent a lot of time in what I call the people business. My business is people, my business is love, my business is care, my business is support. And hours are spent deeply immersed in understanding the human experience and being a witness to humans as they lean into what I believe is an adventure. And there are a few themes that absolutely showed up that I believe centered our collective experience in 2024. And I want to use this as we vision map our 2025 plan. Okay. First, I want you to never forget that you are stronger than what you think you are, right? So I want you to know that that strength and resilience within you is what inspires me in this work. And it's amazing to witness and watch individuals get clear about choosing them, right? Knowing that being other focused is not what is going to help you sustain this evolution. I want you to remember your breath. Your breath is important. Never underestimate the power of your breath as your life energy. It is the opportunity to ground yourself when you are breathing, when you allow for a deep breath, when you allow yourself to sit in the pause. It's telling your body, your mind, your spirit, hey, I'm okay, I'm safe. And so when you find yourself exhausted or overwhelmed, I want you to go back to your breath every single time. I also want you to know that we are going to approach hard strategically, right? So it's not just a hard thing, right? And it's going to take us down. We're going to interrogate the hard. We're going to weigh the evidence in the hard. We're asking ourselves, is this something I can control? If it's not, it's your choice if you're going to let it go and keep wrestling with it. Are you going to allow it to keep allowing you to feel anxiety? Are you going to allow yourself to know that you have everything that you need to get through it? What are you going to do in this hard? Do you have the resources that you need to get through the hard? There is a mantra that I believe will help center us when the hard becomes overwhelming. If we can say to ourselves, let's pause, let's breathe, let's reset. Let's sit in the pause for a second. Let's allow our breath to bring us back to present. And then where's the pivot? Because in those moments when we're feeling overwhelmed, what we need to do is ask ourselves, what do we read? What do I need right now? What do you need right now? What do I need to make this easier? How can I feel a little bit of relief? What do I need? What do I need? What do I need? And we're not going to be able to ask ourselves, what do we need if we don't pause? Okay. And then finally, it's important for us to remember that you are not your wounds. You are not your pain. You are not your anxiety. You are honoring your past, your story, but we're not going to allow it to hijack the narrative. We're not going to allow it to be the only conversation that we identify with. We're going to find those little moments of respite. We're going to make sure that we are allowing for the breath. Right. So yes, no, the pause, breathe, and reset was absolutely right. Right. We are reminding ourselves to pause, to breathe, to reset. Pause, breathe, reset. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Pause, breathe, reset. I don't know what to do. Pause, breathe, reset. My mind is cloudy. Pause, breathe, reset. Okay. I want you to remember it. I want you to implore it. Let me tell you why. When we're considering what I hope you can take away today, I want your centering thought to be, how do you want to be remembered? Right? Like, how do you as an individual, not externally focused, internally, how do you want to be remembered? And I want you to interrogate this question by asking yourself, if I'm being completely honest with myself, if I'm honoring my truth, the life I truly desire is filled with what and free from what? Okay. So if I'm being completely honest with myself as I begin to vision plan for 2025, as I allow myself to reflect on 2024, if I'm being completely honest with myself, the life I truly desire is filled with what and free from what? This is the centering thought that I want you to take with you. And what I want to do is, if you were not able to join us for the first two sessions, I kind of want to do a Thriving with Real rewind so I can run through some of the practical foundational principles that are going to help you take that centering thought as you build and map your 2025. Okay. So we talked about a lot in our first two sessions, and the Reel has the replay, if I'm not mistaken, on Dr. Jada's YouTube. Please go check it out. But if you don't, I'm going to give it to you in 10 minutes. Okay. So during our last 10 sessions, we focused on expanding our understanding of your inner critic. Your inner critic is a thing. We explored how this voice affects your life, how it influences your relationships, how it contributes to perfectionism. This journey is very much all about you getting to know yourself better. You are the prize, right? And so when we recap, we're talking about boundaries, we're talking about attachment theory, and how you can relate to your inner critic better and provide a deeper, more empathetic way to interact with this inner critic. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that we are considering boundaries with love. We are consider identifying your core beliefs, your values. We are honoring healthy connections and healthy communication. I am a therapist, so I follow the feeling. As therapists, remember, we are never asking what's wrong with you. Instead, we are inviting a deeper conversation to learn and understand what happened to you, your individual challenges, your relationship dynamics, what happened and how did it impact how you feel about yourself, your sense of self, your ability to advocate for yourself. Humans are deeply relational people. And so that connection between your origin story and your present story is deep. Okay. And so I want to know, how did you respond to these experiences? How did you learn to cope? I want to know, were the people in your family critical of you? Did they minimize your challenges? Were you expected to do everything right and fast and perfect? Right. And so the reason why it's important for us to interrogate the experiences of our first family is because we are asking ourselves, what messages do I need to unlearn? Right? Like, what do I need to identify that is contributing to this maladaptive behavior pattern that I do not want to take into 2025 with me? And so this means that if it is you prioritizing others over you, why do I do that? Right? Why is this important for me? How is this interwoven into my identity? And so when we're having this conversation, we are talking about your origin story, your first family. Your origin story is your relational blueprint. Okay. Your origin story is your relational blueprint. I live in an origin story. It's where all the magic of your narrative lives, and it's something we all have in common. Okay. So it's interesting to think about how your origin story shapes you. A lot of us, we believe that it's just us, and if we are doing this thing, if we are moving in this direction, we have to figure it out. What I want you to do is, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, where does this feel familiar? A lot of how we understand and set our boundaries comes from what we consider normal, and usually what we consider normal was that foundation was set when we were growing up. And so if you've ever felt distant or strained in a relationship, it might be just because you have hard times understanding or believing that people are going to do what they said they were going to do. And that usually that disappointment lives in your origin story. And so I want you to just reflect on your own origin story. I want you to think about, how were boundaries presented in your family as a child? How were they honored as a child? How was your voice honored as a child? Who supported you as a child? Who nurtured you as a child? And how is that story similar to your current story? Okay. And so we're talking about attachment theory. Attachment theory is this concept that lets us know that our first family, what we learned from our first family, is going to become our love or relational blueprint. It helps to tell us how we're going to move through interpersonal relationships. It is a psychological model that explains how people form and maintain relationships. It's based on the idea that people have an innate need to feel connected with others. Remember, we are deeply relational. Humans are connected beings, and we will do a lot to keep that connection, oftentimes dishonoring ourselves to keep that connection. And so within attachment theory, I mentioned to you all secure attachment, avoidant attachment. We talked about this. I talked to you about secure attachment. Most of us are secure. So 50% of the time, you know that relationships are not going to get it right all of the time. You believe that people can love you. You believe that you can have friendships that are going to nurture you. You believe that sometimes people get it wrong, and you have grace for that. Right? That's most of the time. Other times you might show up as avoidant, right? So it's harder for you to name your needs. It's harder for you to believe that people are going to do what they say they're going to do. And so you become hyper focused on doing it yourself. You become very independent. You're often dismissive of other people because you're the only person that can do it, because your origin story has perhaps convinced you that you are the only person that can do it, and the only person who's going to do it well, or the only person who is going to do it without there having to be a huge cost for asking for help. When we talk about anxious, ambivalent attachment, we're talking about there is an over focus on the need to be close to someone because you fear that they're going to abandon you. And so this is difficult because you didn't get the need of feeling safe and secure within your relationships in your origin story. And when we talk about disorganized attachment, we're talking about anxious and avoidant attachment online at the same time. Sometimes you got what you needed, sometimes you didn't. Sometimes people were there, sometimes they weren't. And so this is you waiting for the other shoe to drop. You are almost anticipating that you're going to be rejected. You're almost proving yourself right that this person is not going to show up because it's never really happened in a consistent way. And so we're asking ourselves, how am I able to identify who I am in my stress patterns? Because you're secure most of the time. When there is a threat to your internal experience, that's when these attachment injuries show up. And what we've learned about attachment principles is that people are usually only as needy as their unmet needs. Okay. So remember, you don't need a lesson on how to push through, on how to put your head down, on how to figure it out. What we are learning, what we're hoping to learn is how can we be vulnerable? How can we believe that we deserve joy and that joy is sustainable? How do we allow ourselves to really lean into happiness and believe that we deserve a life that is full of abundance? Like that is the conversation. It's not the hard. You know how to do hard very well. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to heal from these attachment injuries. When we talk about secure attachment, this is your ability to be aware and effectively respond to your needs and others, right? And so you can, the both and is online when you are securely attached. You are not diminishing yourself for anyone else. You are able to hold somebody else. You are able to be in your I and honor the we at the same time. When we're talking about avoidant attachment, if you hear yourself in avoidant attachment, we went over avoidant. I won't go through the entire presentation, but if you hear yourself in avoidant attachment, or if you are loving someone who has avoidant attachment, what do they need? They need consistency. They need to know that you are going to show up, that you are going to do what you said you were going to do, and that you're going to do it consistently. Okay. If you show up as anxious, this is going to be a conversation of you with yourself. Can you show up for yourself? Can you care for yourself without being overly reliant on another person? If we are talking disorganized attachment, then the healing very much begins with first an awareness that this is happening, because there's a lot of diminishment of, oh, I'm okay. Oh, it's nothing wrong with me. Don't worry about it. And if that is it, if we don't name it, then we can't change it. Okay. And so during the first session, and I will ask Dr. Jada if she can drop it back in your group chat on Facebook, I asked you to take your attachment quiz. I want you to know how you're showing up in this space so that we can get clear on how we want to move forward. Now, remember, when we are identifying attachment, we're also getting very clear about boundaries, because attachment and boundaries go hand in hand. It's hard for you to have boundaries for yourself when you are not clear on how you're interacting with other people, when you have what we call rigid boundaries with other people. So when we talk about rigid boundaries, it means nothing is getting through. There's no space for negotiation. There are times when rigid boundaries, they're fair, but most of the time you're going to live in this very flexible boundary space. Okay. The flexible boundary space is the gold standard of boundaries. It allows you to listen to your internal voice. You get to make the next decision based on what's best for your growth. Your flexible boundary says, hey, I might do more for this person because the reciprocity is there, and I might protect my energy with that person. Right. And then we want to see like which of our boundaries are too flexible, right? So everything gets through. We let everyone walk on all over us. There's a yes for everything. And so you want to interrogate, where do I show up on this boundary continuum? And what do I want to pay more attention to? Who is hard for me to set a boundary with? Right? Because when we talk about what makes it hard to set the boundary, again, we're exploring this cycle. We're learning to understand what drives us. Once we can name it, then we can begin to change it. We can begin to unlearn the behavior patterns that no longer serve us. They live in your first family. They live in your attachment history. They live in you understanding your boundary pattern, where you fall, why you do the things that you do. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build relationships that feel safer, because every defense mechanism is there to keep you safe. And so when we are thinking about boundaries for 2025, I want you to ask yourself, who do you struggle to set boundaries with? Okay. I struggle to set boundaries with who? I struggle to set boundaries when? What is happening? Because sometimes you probably get it exactly right. But who is that person that it is very difficult for you to honor your yes, honor your no, and why? Okay, let's just get curious. Again, I don't want you to move into the fix. I want you to consider where you are right now. I want you to become very reflective and I want you to get curious. Okay, here's the thing, one of the most important things you can practice in this life is to observe every interaction and decide whether the information is asking you to look closely at yourself and own something and be accountable, or to look closely at yourself and acknowledge it is not about you. It's a big deal for me. It is not your job to police the universe, you all. It is not your job to own everybody else's struggle. It is your job to ask yourself, what do I need? And do I have capacity to show up for the other person? Am I honoring myself first so that I'm putting marbles into my jar and everyone can get my overflow, right? Because if your jar is empty, then you have no overflow to get. Okay. And so that brings us to this inner critic. The inner critic is a tough conversation that we are always having with ourselves. And we talked about the inner critic, and I want you to remember that perfectionism lives in this conversation of the inner critic. Okay. So as we begin our exploration, we're always like, okay, where do I have a vice grip on control? Where do I need to have it exactly the way that I have idealized this? Because this is where stress lives. This is where anxiety lives. I want us to be able to see and peel back the layers so we can ask ourselves, why do I carry this belief? As a therapist, I am curious about what has shaped this relentless pursuit of perfection in each of us. And usually, when I'm exploring, it lives in your first family, right? And so that's why I'm asking you to ask yourself, where does this feel familiar? What are the stories, the experiences, the societal pressures that have contributed to this mindset? That's what we're asking ourselves. We're thinking about the forces that are at play here, whether they're from our upbringing, maybe they're our environment, and they're our own internal expectations of ourselves. Are they flawed? Are they unrealistic? And we get to change our mind. The opposite of trauma is choice, you all. So I want you to know that when you are allowing yourself to live in the gray, when the both and becomes the conversation most of the time, this is where peace lives. When you find yourself rigid, this is where this inner critic shows up. Okay. When we understand the inner critic, we understand the drive to perfectionism. We also understand that this inner critic isn't just here to make our life difficult. Your inner critic is trying to protect you. It's a coping mechanism like most other defense strategies. And I want us to be able to re-engage the inner critic so that we can see this inner critic as this watchful guardian, right? It's shielding us from judgment. It is trying to shield us from shame, from hurt. It's trying to keep us safe. Right. And so when he or she, when they show up, we're saying, hey, girl, I see you. You don't want me to be hurt. And so we are honoring the presence of this protective measure that has probably served you well up until this point. And we are asking, do I have to continue to move in this same direction? And so acknowledging the functionality of the inner critic is important. And then we can begin again to interrogate if we still have to use the inner critic in the same way. And so when we're shifting towards authenticity means we're honoring ourselves. We are intentional about our values. We are asking, do I really want to say yes? Would I prefer to say no? Am I honoring my yes and my no? And we're asking, is there a more adaptive way to honor my true self? Do I have to trade authenticity for connection? Right? So, do I have to show up as a shell of myself in order to be in this space? Or is it possible for me to show up in the fullness of myself? If I'm unable to show up in the fullness of my self, why am I in this space? Why do I feel like I need to be in spaces with people where I can't be my authentic self? We're just asking these questions, and I am inviting you to explore these questions with me. We're asking, can I embrace authenticity? Can I align and engage myself with my core values? And so this means we're holding our inner critic with care and compassion. Instead of us feeling like we have to shame her, instead of us feeling like we have to demean her, we're saying, okay, I see that you're trying to protect me, and I appreciate this. I don't need you to protect me in this aggressive way. We can have a more gentle approach. And so I want you to think about, how can we overcome the inner critic? Okay? How can we especially overcome the inner critic when they become toxic? And so again, curiosity is where we're living. I absolutely love exploring the inner critic. I've mentioned this to you all. I'm going to run through it. When we talk about the functionality of the inner critic, we're asking, when did this inner critic first emerge for me? And why has this inner critic been so important to my evolution? Right. And so we're asking, is my sense of self tied in how well I do? Because if so, then your inner critic is going to be aggressive because they are trying to protect you from this worst case scenario. So if your sense of self is tied in how much you do, how many likes you have on socials, how much you obtain, the accolades you receive, who you're married to, if your children are perfect, if you are successful professionally, then your inner critic is consistently interrogating if you are showing up that way. And when you're not, they're usually pretty aggressive. And so we have to go back and we have to reevaluate these demands that we've made on ourselves. Okay. And so again, you want all inner critic stuff, you go back, you look at the previous presentation, but I do want to make sure that we are understanding the inner critic, because when we're mapping our 2025, we have to consider how much influence our inner critic has in our decision making. Right? People, they talk a lot about resolutions not working, right? Like we have all this momentum at the beginning of the year and we're so ready to implement these resolutions that we have. And then by, the end of January or by spring, we stop. And what I want you to consider is, it's not the resolution. It is that we are approaching the resolution in the same way, with the same inner critic, using the same behavior patterns that we've always used. And so we have to go back and we have to ask ourselves, why is my resolution failing? Right? Like, how am I approaching this resolution? And is it different than the way I've always approached it? And so remember, this voice in your head, your internal critic, your inner critic, is telling you not who you are or what you are, but it is reminding you of what you are most afraid of being. Right? So you've had this vision of yourself, and you also have this vision of who you don't want to be. And your inner critic, that internal critic, is always trying to hold you accountable so that you do not become that person. And so that's why we have to honor the reason why this internal, often aggressive voice is there. And we just want to change the relationship that we have with him or her. Okay. So I want us to just take a moment in that recap. I want us to pause for a second. Take a deep breath, because I want us to dive just a little deeper. Okay, so we have went through attachment. I ran through it. We went through boundaries. I ran through it. We've talked about inner critic, of course, did the recap. And now I want to talk about, where do we go from here? Okay, so what are our next steps towards awareness? Remember, we can't change anything if we're unaware. And move into action. Or how can we move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset? Right? That is essentially the conversation that we're having. And so I want you to ask yourself, can you imagine a life where you wake up every day fulfilled, where you're intrinsically motivated? Can you imagine a life where your actions resonate with your values, where you feel aligned, where you are authentically showing up? Are you able to consider that life can be good, and that this good life is sustainable, that we're not waiting for the other shoe to drop? Okay, so I want us to consider these things, and I want you to consider these things from a very compassionate frame. The lens is kindness to self. Self compassion is where we begin every conversation. And I'm hopeful that you can offer yourself self compassion in 2025. This is where we start, you all. The essence of self compassion at its core involves you being warm and understanding towards yourself. So you're treating yourself the way you would treat a friend who is in a vulnerable space. This is self-kindness. This is common humanity. This is the understanding and the realization that we're all going through hard things, that you are not in this alone, and that you don't have to suffer alone, that this inadequacy and struggle that you feel is only you is actually all of us. And so we can take a deep breath because everyone is going through it. Even the most successful person has their moments, right? And so if we allow for this mindfulness, this holding of our thoughts in a balanced way, then rather over identifying with these feelings of negativity and shame and not feeling like we're enough, and allowing these to dominate our behavior patterns and our judgment of ourselves, we can instead create a space that is more compassionately responsive. Remember, self-compassion is kindness to self. So I want you to think about that. Self-compassion is kindness to self. And then I want you all to consider, where are you holding your stress? Okay. I never want you to forget that the body keeps the score. Okay. Your body is going to tell you what's wrong with you. When your mind has taken a small piece of uncertain information and spun a story around it, and it ends up consuming your thoughts, I want you to ask yourself, what is uncertainty doing to me? How is this need to control everything influencing my life? Right? Because here's the way that this works. There's an event. That event evokes a thought. The thought is going to give you a feeling. That feeling is going to inhibit a action, and from that action there's going to be a result, right? And so understanding that precipitating event, so I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't know why I feel overwhelmed. I have been feeling overwhelmed. I want to be able to track it back to that first event. Where were you? Who were you around? What were you doing? What were you talking about? What activated the feeling, the thought, the action, the belief? And usually, if you can't think about it, you can feel it, right? And so the awareness for 2025, I really want it to live in your body. Your body is very much your energy source. So when we talk about, I have headaches, and there isn't a medical model or a pathological reason why I am feeling the way that I'm feeling. Your doctor didn't tell you that you have migraines. I'm asking you, what are you not being able to connect with from a higher consciousness perspective? If you feel, tension in your shoulders, like, what part of your intuition are you not allowing to lead you? Are you not allowing your authentic self to come online? If you're feeling uncomfortable in your GI area and your stomach, I'm asking, okay, well then where do you not feel like you have control, and where is your locus of control? Okay. And so I want us to remember that most of our intuitive thought process is going to live in our body first, 80%, and then it becomes a cognitive conversation. But usually, what we want to do is we want to go directly into intellectualizing the problem. When we talk about healing, this is a heart conversation. It's not a head conversation. And so we have to be able to lean into our body, because your body remembers. I want you to be able to cultivate curiosity with your body. I want you to be able to take a deep breath when you feel overwhelmed. I want you to remember that self-awareness and introspection are the key to understanding your emotions, and taking steps towards your personal growth begins with remembering that your body keeps the score. Okay. So I'm feeling unwell. I'm feeling uncertain. Where do I feel it in my body? right? I am trying to push through. What is your body asking of you? Because what I know for sure and what I've learned in this work is if you don't rest, your body will rest you. Your body will sit you down, right? And so it's better for us to allow moments of rest, give this body that works so hard for us all of the time what they need before we have unexplainable medical conditions that cause us to feel discomfort or dis-ease. Okay. And so, what am I asking of you? I really want you all to just dream with me for a second, friends. I want you to consider what your best dream is. If you create the vision, then I want you to believe in that vision. I want you to be able to ask yourself, am I living my best life doing the most good? I want you to be able to live your dream. And I've shared with you all my dreams. These are my dreams. I'm already dreaming. I'm dreaming that I am able to lift up my nonprofit where I'm empowering and supporting BIPOC students as they pursue advanced degrees, and we're funding them and they feel empowered in their world. I'm dreaming that I'm training the next generation of therapists who are supporting high performers like yourself so that you don't burn out, so that work can feel fulfilling. I am dreaming that I have created mindful merch and that people are able to be reminded of what it means to care for themselves every day. And I am building progressive spaces where like-minded individuals can get together and we can remember how effective we are. I want you to dream with me. I want you to allow yourself to dream. I want the dream that's so scary that you don't even want to say it out loud. I want you to spend 2025 dreaming. I want you to create the vision because we are visual beings as humans. And then I want you to believe that it can happen because the belief is what's going to drive the purpose. Okay. And so I want you to take a moment to think about this. What does being your best look like for you right now? And that's going to look different depending on your capacity. What does being your level best look like? What does resilience mean for you? And I always want to kind of rethink and operationally redefine resilience because resilience for you may not look like resilience for me. Resilience for you may mean that you need to sleep longer so that you can have more energy. Resilience for me might mean that, you know what, I need movement as medicine. Right. And so I want you to think about what you need. I want you to ask yourself, is my life allowing me to take breaks without feeling guilty? Like, do I allow myself to pause, to connect to clarity so I can know which way I want to move? I want you to ask yourself, are you setting realistic timelines for yourself, for your projects, for your goals? Are you breaking them into smaller pieces? Or do you feel like you should already be at the end goal? I don't think that we honor the process enough. I don't think that we talk about it enough. It's so interesting. I was just having a conversation with a consultant earlier, and I study people and I love an acceptance speech because the acceptance speech tells the whole story. And very rarely do I hear someone winning like a pinnacle award who's not saying, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been doing this for 30 years, right? And now they have this, they are accepting this grand award. And I need for us to know that it takes time to get there. And I want us to live in that common humanity so that we can create our own timeline. And within that timeline, we are allowing our best self to evolve on our own terms. Okay. We're not living in comparison. We are allowing ourselves also to invest in relationships, to grow together. It's always interesting to me when I have a new client and my clients are doing amazing things. And so we begin to map this vision the same way that I'm doing with you all. And they are very eye focused. They're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm like, okay, hang on, said client. I have not experienced anyone. And if you are honest, neither have you who's ever done something big by themselves. And so as we grow and change, I want you to look at your current circle. I want you to look in your current circle, outside of your current circle, and I want you to think, what resources do I already have that can help support the best version of my dream? right? I want you to take a moment to think about your connections. I want you to think about what brilliant individuals you have sitting right next to you that can be your strategy share partners, that can be your accountability partners. I want you to ask yourself, how can I deepen the relationships within my own community? How can I be a star in my own life? How can I lift up someone that I know is doing something that's already aligned with what I'm doing? And how can we combine forces to do this amazing thing together? I would love to shout out Dr. Jada. Dr. Jada and I, we do things together all of the time because we are aligned in our vision. I didn't have to go outside to find a brilliant Black doctor because guess what? I am surrounded by brilliant Black doctors. All I have to do is reach into my circle. All I have to do is ask my network to support my vision, my dream of myself. And so I want you all to consider investing in relationships in 2025, really nurturing them. I also want you to remember that investing in relationships means reciprocity is a part of the conversation. It can't just be, I'm taking, you have to give too. And so when we focus on our relationships and the relationships that we already have, we can create a supportive community. I am fortunate enough to be around brilliant people every day who inspire me and who remind me that I'm not alone in this dream of envisioning a better world. And so I want you to know that when you are connected with like-minded people, it helps you grow, it helps you feel safe. So please, in 2025, go find your community. Nurture your community, not everyone else's community. Let's water our grass. Okay. I also want you to think about a few words, and I probably have you for another 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes. I want us to think joy. I want us to think faith, peace, happiness, and abundance. Okay. If we can center our lens, our frame, our guiding principles on joy, faith, peace, happiness, and abundance for 2025 and create the definition of what this means for you. I'll start us off. When we talk about joy, what I want you to consider is this ability to experience those bursts of pure delight. Okay, like your heart shows up in this moment. It lights up your world, right? You are naturally brimming from the inside out. When was the last time you experienced joy? I want you to consider it. When was the last time I experienced real joy? I want you to think about faith. When you think about faith, I want you to think about the comfort of trusting in something bigger than yourself, whether it's a belief in a system, it's the path that you've chosen for yourself, or perhaps it's just simply the journey ahead. I want you to think of faith and your ability to move forward, knowing that it's all going to work out. What if it all works out? Faith, joy. Okay. And I want you to think about your own definition of what this means. And then I want you to ask yourself, what does faith look like for me? How has faith allowed me to get through hard times? When was the last time I experienced joy? How has joy helped me get through hard times? And then I want you to think about peace and abundance. Peace being finding that quiet space within you where the storms of life, challenges, but you are able to calm down in this piece, right? You're able to handle whatever comes to you, and you know that you have the resources. When we think about abundance, I want you to think about embracing the mindset that there's enough to go around. This is not a scarcity mentality. I can be successful and you can be successful. I can support your success, and that inspires me to lift up my ability so I too can be successful, right? I want you to know that we don't have to constantly worry about this consideration that it's all going to end. We get to live an abundant life, in all areas of our life. Okay. So think joy, think peace, think happiness. And then I want you to trust that all things are coming together for your highest good. All things are coming together for your highest good. So I want to invite you to consider this. Do you truly believe you deserve the life you have envisioned for yourself? Do you really believe it? Right? So, do you really believe you deserve good? Do you really believe you deserve joy, happiness, abundance? Do you really have faith? Do you really believe that it's all going to work out? I want you to ask yourself, what do you really, really want this year? And what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? Okay. I want you to see it. I want you to visualize it. I want you to imagine yourself there. What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What are you wearing? Who are you with? We need to be able to see this vision of the best version of our life. And how do we do that? How do we center ourselves when we are feeling uncertain? I want you to always go back to your core values. I want you to think about your core values. Knowing your core values and making decisions based on your core values allows you to set clear boundaries for yourself and others. Values clarification helps you determine what you find most important in life and how you describe yourself, how you are making decisions when it's hard. It's the heart of what you stand for in the world. So I want you to be able to ask yourself, what are my values? And am I living in my values? Right? Your highest priorities, your deepest held beliefs, the fundamental driving forces of your behavior patterns and your decision making should make up your values. I dropped this for you all before. I'll make sure that we share it again. But if you have not done a formal values exercise, I think it's important. We've touched on values-based decision making. It's a big deal. I believe in it in my practice. I believe in it in coaching and workshops. We need to be able to understand the principles and standards and qualities that we find worthwhile and that are essential in our life. We need to allow these things to guide our decisions. Okay. We need to make certain that they align because they help to provide meaning. When your internal experience does not align with your external experiences, then you're going to feel some type of way. If you have not identified your core values, then it's time for you to reflect. And so I want you to ask yourself, what am I anchoring myself in? Right? If I'm uncertain, what is the driving force behind it? Remember, the time is now, you all. There is no moment more powerful than right now. We have nothing holding us back. As you start to gain clarity on what truly matters, and as you begin to honor your commitments, I want you to ask yourself over and over and over again this year, what do I really want? What do I really want? What do I really want? And what am I willing to sacrifice to achieve it? Who do you want to inspire along the way? What do you really want? Are you ready to go after it, even if it feels scary? Remember, growth mindset says, because I'm doing something that I've never done before, it is going to feel scary. And so I have to know that because I have never done it before, that I'm going to be nervous, but I'm not going to let that stop me. And then we're asking, what sacrifices are we willing to make? What do you need to stop to have this life that you've envisioned? What do you need to start? What do you need to continue? And so, again, we're interrogating these questions. And so, as we wrap, I want to encourage you to consider a few things. These are growth centered perspectives. I want you to remember these essentials on tough days. First, I want you to offer yourself patience, grace, and more patience. Okay. Take your time with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Accept what you feel. When the overwhelm feels stifling, I want you to ask yourself, what am I holding on to? What do I need to surrender? What is difficult for me to accept? Okay. Because once we're able to surrender and accept what is, then we can put the proper energy into what we can control. Right. And so I don't want you to punish yourself over and over again. I want to learn the lesson. I want to move on. I want us to know that we're going to get it wrong, especially if we're really challenging ourselves to expand. We need to get good rest, you all. 7 hours is really what we need plus, right? So if you're operating within the 6 hour space, I get it, but can we add 30 more minutes? Can we get to 7? Can we get to 7.5? Can we get to 8? It's difficult to center your thoughts and feel clear and connected when you don't have enough rest. I want you to give yourself kindness, right? Instead of shame. That inner critic, she comes in hard, hot, fast, heavy, all of the things. I want you to ask her to just soften the voice a little bit. Talk to her like you would talk to your best friend who's in a vulnerable space, your niece, your child who is really hurting. Like, give yourself that same voice. I want you to give yourself the win when you accomplish the smaller goals. Are you allowing yourself to live in your wins, remembering that all change happens at the micro level? I want you to remember that we don't have to do everything right now. We don't have to have every hard conversation right now. If you are not going to be able to show up as your best self, then maybe you wait a second. It's okay to let the calmer head prevail. That's the difference between reactivity and responsiveness. We want to be responsive in 2025. Remember that a bad moment doesn't mean a bad life. We all have bad moments. I don't want you to over identify with the bad because then it's hard for us to put our finger on the good. I want you to know that struggle can be a space for deep growth. The learning, the expansion is not easy. Healing is messy. It is messy, but in the messy middle is our sweet spot, is where we learn, is where we get clear about ourselves. Right? It's where we learn to let go. It is where we learn who is difficult to trust and why. It's where we begin to interrogate where we feel most important and supported, where we insecure, what we need, right? And so allow yourself to be in the messy. It's okay. The messy is where the expansion lives, is where the evolution lives. And then I want you to remember that it doesn't matter what you're going through, that is temporary, that this current discomfort is not permanent. The sweet spot of therapy is learning how to ride the intense wave onto the other side, knowing that feelings are not permanent, that you are not your thoughts, that your feelings will eventually diminish into something more manageable, right? So when you're in the intensity of that feeling, ride that wave. Ask yourself, what do I need? Where have I felt this feeling before? Who can I call who's going to support me? Can I trust myself that I can get through hard times, because I've been through hard times and I know how to do hard. And so I want you to be able to ask yourself these essential questions on tough days. And most importantly, if you don't remember anything else, when you feel overwhelmed, just breathe. Okay, just breathe. Allow yourself to sit in the pause. Allow yourself to reset. Allow yourself to remember that you have everything that you need to live the life that you've imagined. Remind yourself that it's already all right, right? Like, talk nicely to yourself. And then we will meet at our next session, right? I believe that our next session is Girl Get Ready, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to be there, but if not, you can definitely reach out to me. I will engage you. I will answer your questions. I am here to support. I will always be here to support. It is always a pleasure, and I don't take for granted being able to be in space with the real. I love what Dr. Jada is doing. Dr. Jada's team is amazing. I love the programming that she's offering for her practice. I love that she understands that in order for us to be the best versions of ourselves, that it takes a holistic approach to healing. And I'm just happy to be on the team. So I hope you all got something from this space, and I will see you soon.